Hey, welcome to How to Play, brought to you by the Games Capital. Today the game we're examining is Villages of Valeria, which is a tableau building game. So basically what that means is you're going to be creating a display of cards in front of you as the game progresses, representing your village. It's going to have different buildings in it, there'll be different characters that will come and live in that village, and the cards will increase the effectiveness of your village, give you new actions and things as the game progresses. It's for 1 to 5 players, so there is a solo version of the game that you can play, and it has a fantasy medieval type theme associated with it, which you'll see in the various buildings and characters that come into play. Alright, before we get into how the game actually works, let's have a look at what's in the box. So Villages of Valeria is essentially a card game, and so the majority of the components are cards. We have 2 separate decks. There is a large buildings deck, many cards in there, different buildings, and then a smaller adventurers deck with all the different characters that come into play. That's the main part of the game. Each player also will have a castle card that they begin with. It's a couple of reference cards, and then an action token, and a bunch of little coins that get distributed during the game, and you use those to purchase actions or purchase goods during the game. Alright, so that's basically the components. Let's have a look at how you play. So to begin the game, each player is given one of these castle cards as their starting building. There is gold in the game. Depending on the number of players, there's a different amount of gold in total available for the players, but each player at the start of the game will receive 3 gold, which they will put in their player area. Then 6 of the building cards are dealt to each player as your starting hand, and to begin with, the way these cards work, they serve 2 purposes. So each card is a building type, and it'll tell you at the top. So for example, this card is the barracks. In the top corner it has a little purple shield which indicates the victory points that this card is going to be worth at the end of the game. It also has a little symbol representing the building type, and that is important for the adventurers, which we'll look at in a little while. So each building belongs to a specific type. Then down this side here it also shows some resources, and what that is indicating is the cost in resources that this building has in order to place it in your play area to build it. Now there are 4 resources in the game. We have food, stone, there's also wood and magic, the 4 different resources that are used to acquire these buildings. And then also the building will have some little action listed there that once the building is in play, you get that action, and they vary in how they work. Some of them are immediate actions, some of them are permanent, some happen in certain phases during the game. A little bit more on that later. But that's one use of these building cards. The other use is listed at the bottom of the card, and generally what you'll see there is a particular resource with the little gold coin symbol. What this means is that this card can also be used to purchase that particular resource if you have it in play. So at the start of the game, from your hand of 6 cards, you can choose one of those cards to immediately activate as a resource card. So you would take that card and you would place it under your castle so that it sits like this. Now the castle already has this little symbol which represents the 4 different resources, which means you can use this particular spot to take any resource that you may need out of those 4. And then you've also now got a spot to take, in this case, wood. So you place that first resource there, which gives you a little starting option for resources. Each player will do that, and then you'll have 5 cards remaining and you're ready to begin the game. So you'll choose a start player. The start player will take the little castle token, and they will choose one of the 5 actions that are available in the game, and the game will begin. Alright, so let's now examine what the 5 actions are. So the first action is the harvest action, and if you want to take that action, you will take the little castle token and place it on the spot for harvest, and you will take that action. Now, just before we explain what the actions are, the way a turn works is the active player will choose the particular action and do whatever is associated with that action. And then all of the other players will have the choice to follow that action and do the same action, but a slightly inferior version of that action. And I'll explain what that is as the game progresses. But each player has the option to take that same action as the start player. All right, so the harvest action, very simple. You get to draw 3 cards from the building or adventurers' decks, or piles rather. So your choice is to take a random one from the top of the deck, or you take one of the face-up cards that are available. Now during the game there are going to be cards that end up on these piles. You'll be discarding them for whatever reason, purchasing, etc. So there could be more than one card on a pile. You're only allowed to take the top card, but of course once you take the top one, then the next is available, and so on. If ever a pile runs out, then you immediately replace it from the deck. So there's always 5 face-up cards that are available to take. So during the harvest action, you can take 3 of those cards. If you want to follow that action, then you can draw 1 card from the pile. All right, so that's the harvest action. It's a way to acquire cards into your hand. All right, let's have a look at the next action, which is develop. All right, so the develop action is a way to get those resource options into your castle. So from your hand of cards, you can choose one to play into your castle, but there's a cost involved, and that is another card. You've got to discard another card, placing it on one of these piles, and then you can add another card to your castle, and this will increase the production possibilities that you have during the game. So that's the develop action. The follow action for develop is exactly the same, except it's going to cost 2 cards that you must discard in order to play 1. So a little bit more expensive, but you get to do that same action. All right, the next action is the build action. Let's have a look at that. Now, the build action is a way of getting these building cards into your tableau and starting to develop your village. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a cost for each building in resources listed on the side of the card. Now, the way this works, if you want to take the build action, is you've got to pay for the resources with gold. Now, providing you can produce those resources, you would take, so for example, in this instance, I need 1 food to build the tannery. I would take my gold coin that I've got in my supply and I would place it on the card that I have that produces food, and then I can put this card into play, and it now permanently is in my village. Then I may get some kind of action associated with that building. There are different ways that they work. So for example, if it has a little lightning bolt next to it, then that's just something that I immediately get as soon as I build that, and then that's it, finished. So I would take, in this case, 1 gold as a bonus for building that. Some of them give you end game bonus points depending on other things that you've built. Some of them give you additional resources or cards during a certain phase of the game. So there's a few different things that will come into play as a result of building. Right, now the other interesting thing is if you need to build a particular building or would like to, but you don't quite have enough resources in front of you, you can actually spend your coins and place them into other players' spots on their castle cards to claim or buy the resources off them. Now you can't do it in their castle, but any other cards that they have for resources displayed underneath their castle, you can place a coin over there. The disadvantage is that they will end up with that coin, but it may give you a resource that you need to get a building out that is crucial to your strategy. So that's always an option, paying for other resources from other players. Now, the follow action, backtrack. As part of that action, the building action, you also get to take one card from the display into your hand as the final thing that you do. So you can build a card and take a card. Now, the follow action allows you to do exactly the same thing, to build a building from your hand, paying with gold, etc., but you don't get the bonus card. So it's just slightly less that you get for that action. All right, the next action is recruit, which is where the adventurers come into play. Okay, so the recruit action is how you get the adventurers into your village. Now, I think I might have mentioned during the harvest phase that you could take either buildings or adventurers. You can't. You can only take the buildings during the harvest phase. So to get the adventurers, you need to take the recruit action. And when you do that, you have to pay 1 gold to hire one of these adventurers. And as well as that, each of the adventurer cards has a building requirement. So just like the buildings have a building cost, these have little symbols that match the various building symbols. And in order to recruit this particular adventurer, you need to have the buildings that are pictured in down the side there. If you don't have those, then you can't take that particular adventurer. So you pay your gold. As long as you've got the requirement, you can then take this and add it into your tableau. Just like the buildings, these will give you some kind of ability as well that you can use either immediately or during certain phases, depending on what the ability might be. So that's the recruit action. If you're going to follow someone that does the recruit action, you can do exactly the same. However, it's going to cost you 2 gold to hire one of those adventurers instead of just 1. All right, the next action is the final one, and it is called tax. So the tax action is very simple. You, by taking that action, get to take 1 gold from the supply, add it to your own supply, and you also get to take 1 card from the building supply as well. The follow action is just taking a card. You don't get the gold. All right, so they're the 5 actions. Just with relation to the money, at the start of your turn, any money that may be sitting on resources from the previous turn, or when other players have perhaps used your resources during their turn, you can take that gold back so that you've got a full supply of money at the start of your turn. So that's something very important. All right, so they're the 5 actions. Let's have a look at how the game ends. The end of the game is determined by the number of buildings that are built, and depending on the number of players, that number may be different. With 2 and 3 players, it's 12 buildings. With 4 and 5 players, it's 10 buildings. So once somebody has reached that target, then the game will end. All you do to finish is add up the totals on the little purple shields, and then any cards, usually the adventurer cards, maybe some of the building cards, will give you some bonuses for having specific other things in your play area. They might give you bonus points. Add up your totals, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Simple as that. And that's Villages of Valeria. In summary, players try to be the first to complete a certain amount of buildings or adventurers in their village. The start player in each round chooses one of 5 possible actions and carries it out. The other players may follow this action by carrying out a slightly inferior version of it. As soon as one player has built the specific amount of buildings or adventurers required, the game ends. Scores are tallied, and the highest score wins. Well, Villages of Valeria is a great little game. Very quick to play, easy to learn. But the scope of cards, or the variety of cards, gives you a lot of different options for strategy. Certain cards work well together, and creating those combinations can be quite effective. So if you like a fantasy-themed game, which the artwork on this is great, then I'm sure you're going to love Villages of Valeria. So make sure you check it out. Thanks for watching. Happy gaming.